This is the DRS train.
And we are back. I'm Peter Brook. I'm joined by NavF1, Nedzo F1 Brickbox, and HCL, and you're listening to the DRS Train podcast. So that was an interesting race. I mean, a lot of questions have been answered and concerns that we had during testing about how these new regulations would work. But I think that the Sakon Yamamoto to my Takuma Sato will agree with me that, all things considered, that could have been so much worse.
Yeah, it could have been. Obviously, there were some niggling issues that do need to be sorted out. The race start procedure maybe needs to be extended by a little bit so that people don't have as much bad starters as we saw. We saw Lawson, particularly with Colapinto. George Russell nearly took his own head off by his reaction in the call room, seeing Colapinto nearly just explode straight into the back of Liam. But yeah, I liked it. I've seen a lot of people saying that it was too gimmicky or whatever, but I don't see it. I really don't see it. I think that while, yes, not all of your overtakes are fully on pure legitimacy, and that is all due to energy deployment, that's kind of the point. And people say Formula E is so wild and so entertaining and so brave, and it's because of the exact same reasons. It's because some people decide, you know what, I'm going to conserve in different corners to you, and I'm going to try and get track position. And F1's going to be the same like that, at least for the first few races, until everyone realizes what the best way is to conduct these races. But I really like it. I do. I think that finally we've gotten to the point where people can just make overtakes whenever they want to. We've seen overtakes into places where we wouldn't usually see overtakes. And even then, the ones in the places where you usually see them are a lot more concise and can actually be performed in a lot easier ways. I think it's definitely a lot more. It's a lot less rigid. Because before you wait for a DRS zone and they might get by, and then you wait for another half lap until they get to the next DRS zone. But now it genuinely feels like anyone could make a position at any time, which is what I like, especially when you're fighting, especially. But yeah, I like it. It could, as you said, it could have been a lot worse. We could have had, as Martin Brundle predicted, 10 or 12 finishes. We didn't. We could have had major crashes. We could have had rear wing failures. We didn't. So yeah, we move into the rest of the calendar and hope that we don't get missiles strapped the track in the coming races.
I mean, we still have time to see crashes at the start and massive accidents due to difference of speed and wing failures. It's only the first race, so things can still go wrong. They have many occasions to do so yet.
Yeah, that is a point. It can still happen, but the fact that it didn't happen in the first race, everyone's going to keep developing. Everyone's going to keep developing, and the chances will become less and less. I think that we will have at least one major issue. But also, was there any? I don't think was there a full safety car at any point in this race, or was it only virtuals?
Three
Only
virtual
virtuals.
safety cars, yeah.
I mean, that's a point. We didn't have a full safety car. I'm not sure the same could be said for 2014, for other regulation changes in the past. So, is it a bit gimmick? Is that a bit of a gimmicky stat? Probably. But yeah, at least there was no major problems. At least not in the race. There might have been there were people stopping and stuff in practice and a couple of near misses. But yeah.
I guess at the start we nearly avoided a huge shunt with Colapinto just about missing Lawson's struggling car. So yeah, I feel like yes, it's good that we didn't have a safety car, but that could have easily been a huge crash there. And if Colapinto hits Lawson there and Lawson goes across the track, that probably ends up with like at least two more cars in there. But yeah, I mean, Hajar's DNF was very composed, and the Aston Martin DNFs were even more calculated. So yeah, no huge issue there.
I mean, it wasn't even okay. It wasn't even really. But the Aston Martin didn't really DNF. They just kind of hokey cokey. They were in, they were out, they were in, they were out. And they kind of shook it all about.
Yeah. So well, should we look at the top of the grid then and start with Mercedes?
Yeah, because of course, of all the uncertainties about testing and how things were going to be, one thing that everyone knew would happen was that they would be very fast, and that was confirmed with this. I mean, locking out the front row. I mean, the qualifying gap was very 1988 to the rest of them, to be 8 tenths faster than Hadjar and the Ferraris. But then in the race, it was actually surprisingly close with Ferrari, and had Ferrari not done their classic thing of pit strategies, they might well have beaten them. So that's interesting to see. There was quite a fun fact that apparently this is the first Mercedes 1-2 without Lewis Hamilton since 1955, which is quite remarkable. But they had very fast pace, and yeah, that was some quite entertaining battling with Leclerc at the start with George in those first 10 laps or so as well.
Could you say it was kind of reminiscent of 2016 when Vettel snuck into the lead at turn 1, and then they just kind of fell? I don't think Ferrari were ever actually, even with, because I think again, this is not the greatest degree of accuracy, but Crofty said that it was about 10 seconds that they lost from not pitting under the VSC, and they finished like, it was just over, I think, 10 seconds ahead. I mean, yes, obviously track position, and they're not always, overtakes aren't always guaranteed, but I don't think Ferrari were actually, and at least not to actually win the race on pure merit. I don't think they would have quite got there. Leclerc might have beaten Antonelli, but otherwise.
I mean, in the case of 2016, what screwed them over was that red flag, because it gave a free pit stop to Mercedes, and then Kimi's car died anyway. If that hadn't happened, they might have won that one. But this time, yeah, the pace was, because the thing is that once the Mercedes did get ahead, they didn't exactly just disappear into the horizon like we saw so many times last year with McLaren. They benefited from Ferrari being stupid. And if they hadn't done that, they might not have been ahead of them, but they would have been within overtake mode range, or whatever, straight mode range, whatever it's called now. It's that I'm still working all of that out a bit, because we'll get used to all of that in the later races.
Well, maybe we won't.
Maybe we won't. I don't know. It's kind of hard to wrap my head around a bit, but it was a bit chaotic, because I think in the first 10 laps, George and Leclerc exchanged the lead 7 times, because he would pass him on the really fast turn 9, whatever it is, turn 8, turn 9, and then just get passed again immediately the next corner, because the battery runs out and you get that fucking word of the year clipping happening. It's so I don't. It kind of makes it tricky, because another thing with this race is I think it had more than twice as many overtakes as the one last year, but most people would agree that last year's race was far better. Obviously, it was wet, which helped, but it's sort of, the overtakes felt a bit gimmicky, because so much of it is down to when you use your battery. And as the race settled down, as well as the field spreading out, there was just less, because I think people were working out where they should and shouldn't use it. And that's probably going to be the case in a lot of races. The first stint, everyone's trying to work it out, and then as the race goes on, it's like, okay, well, if I know that if I use it here, I can just hold position and it'll be fine.
My main issue with the overtakes was more where they were taking place. So they were happening way before the corner even came about. And I feel like that is the main issue. Like, gimmicky overtakes are fine, but Formula E get a lot of slack for their overtakes, but it's always dive bombs and kind of brutal, pushy overtakes, which I feel can be entertaining. This one, like Russell versus Leclerc, could have been really good. Well, the first few overtakes were good, because Leclerc was getting it done in that turn, which I don't know the number of, because I don't know numbers of turns. What is it before the chicane?
What was before the chicane? Turn 8?
I can't remember. Since they
changed
changed the layout, and they got, I think the left.
So
I think it's turn 9 now, because there's fewer corners than
the
there
chicane
used
is
to be.
9 and 10, I believe. But if you're talking about the flat out left hander beforehand, I think that's like turn 8. I think it is. I don't know.
Okay,
The hard
well, when Leclerc was overtaking into turn 9, that was nice. But when a car would just breeze through before the corner, that's not really what you want to see. And that's also criticism for DRS, by the way, because with DRS, we used to see a lot of cars just go by. And I think Nedzo is going to use that point now to
I was
say
just
that
about to say
it's
these are
definitely
the exact same problems we had with DRS. And what I want to see, though, is Obviously we've seen this race, and obviously we've got these points, but I want to see what happens at a different circuit, because by all estimations from the experts, this is a very energy heavy track. Like there's a four. Well, it's the only track in F1 history that has 4 DRS zones. It had 1, 2, 3, 4 sizable straights with a lot of stuff in between that you just burn energy. I want to see what happens. Obviously, next week we're at China, which is, I'm going to assume it's very energy heavy as well, because you have the massive fuck off long back straight, you have the massive, not massive, but the sizable front straight, you have the run up to turn 6, you have the run through the long left right, which will be probably flat out, the run down in towards the snail section. There's a lot of stuff that I want to see what happens when we get to a track like what tracks have we got? Suzuka, where we get to a circuit that, yes, it's got a couple of good deployment zones, or even Monaco, where you're going to be constantly deploying energy, and where maybe, because now we get super clipping because you run out of battery, but a place like Monaco, you might not run out of battery. So maybe something like overtake mode or boost mode or whatever it is might get to you to a point where you're actually using the full battery over the course of a lap. So maybe overtaking would be easier because of the extra boost and the extra speed. I want to see what happens at different circuits where the straights aren't so prevalent. I mean, it's not great because the first 5 races of the season, I don't know, because I know we're going. Australia obviously is a heavy energy deployment circuit. China is. Suzuka, although is not because there wasn't a DRS zone through 130R, it wasn't considered a very straight line, but it has got good straight lines. Obviously through after Spoon all the way down to the Casio Triangle and then down towards Turn 1. I want to see what happens when we get to a circuit like Monaco, maybe like I'm trying to think of other circuits that aren't very straight heavy, and I just can't think of any. But yeah, you see.
Just quickly before I give it to Ace, the issue with that argument is a lot of people are saying they devised those regulations to make Monaco entertaining, but Monaco is one race out of 24. And what do you do at Spa, Silverstone, Monza, Baku? It's really scary to think what's going to happen there. Like, surely, I'm trying to be confident that they will work something out, because if they don't, it's like it could really be bad. They could just, midway through the Baku Strait, it goes down to 270 kph, and you just flatline there and nothing happens. So I'm trying to be confident that they know it could be really bad and they will find a solution, because there's no way that happens. Right now, you put a 2026 Formula One car there, they hit top speed a third down the way, it clips halfway down, and then you just stay at that speed. That's not feasible. But yeah, Ace.
I want to make a prediction right now. And my prediction is Monaco is going to be a banger race. Absolutely stunning. And it's because of the overtakes. Let's go back to 2011 when Pirelli joined in. And nobody really understood the tires. And so people were pitting 3-4 times each race. And widely different performances. Tires were hitting the cliff and slowing down hard, and all that mess, which made for very interesting races. But the main point was those were interesting because the teams didn't understand the tires, and so they were just messing around with it. They were very clumsy. They were not optimizing anything. They were just learning and by making mistakes, in basically. And what I saw today with the overtakes mode and yada yada was basically the same. I didn't see drivers planning the overtake. I didn't see some kind of smart maneuver. No, I just saw drivers that deployed all the power they could, made the overtake, and then maybe they didn't have power anymore and they got overtaken back. Or the battle between Russell and Leclerc. What I saw was Russell being so sure he was gonna win that he did not at all risk anything with Leclerc and always gave way. And Leclerc understood that since he was always giving way, just made the most outstanding maneuvers and attempts to overtake, and they just stick. And there was no planning, no smartness. It was all just clumsy. Okay, and I think this is gonna be the same also Monaco and a few months after. And so because it is clumsy, we see many interesting overtakes and events during the race. Then in 2027, 2028, once the teams understand how things work, how to make overtakes with these mods and boost, then we're gonna see very different races. We're gonna see some kind of smartness element from the drivers, and we no longer are gonna see these banger races also.
I think as well that it's the first race of the season. They don't want to throw away a potential win, but I think because they don't really fully understand the pecking order yet, they're still not entirely aware of what fights they can and can't win. So they're just trying to take it safe and that. But it's gonna, yeah, like you said, it's gonna. I mean, of the races coming up soon, Japan is the one that sounds the most interesting in how it's going to work with the battery because there's so little braking at that circuit. Like it's the hairpin and the Casio triangle. Other than that, you don't really brake at all. So there's hardly anywhere to charge the battery properly. And then you've got two very, very long straights. So that's going to be kind of interesting. But Monaco does have the potential to be a really good race because the cars are a little bit smaller, but the clipping is probably never going to happen. Because like DRS was basically useless there because the straights are not nearly long enough to really get the effect from it. And in this case, they're not long enough to even use up the battery, really. So it would another change, of course, is that some teams, such as Ferrari, for example, based off their race start today, would probably realise, well, it doesn't matter if we don't get pole at Monaco because we can just take the lead from 10th place or whatever at the start. It's good. That's the race starts with just there was a lot going on there, and this is what we were kind of expecting after testing, because George obviously his start was fine, other than the Ferraris got past him. Antonelli had a very bad start, but did eventually get up there. Lindblad's start was amazing. Aston had a good start. They are all that. It was just all over the place, really. But Ferrari are clearly the best ones at that.
I just saw a tweet from Chip Ganassi Racing criticizing the super clipping, downshifting on straights, battery management. We don't do that here, we race. I feel like IndyCar and Formula E are going to be quite smug during the first few months of this season. And they have been on, a lot of the IndyCar and Formula E teams have been smug on social media since February. And I feel like that's going to be something we're going to see quite a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, there is some merit to that, but then at the same time, Formula E is an illegitimate series, and IndyCar has their own hybrids, which has kind of killed things a bit lately, but at least the drivers can push all the time in their cars. That's a nice change.
I will also just say there's also two-time Daytona 500 winner, William Byron, NASCAR driver, has also said, what on earth is going on in Formula One? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
not
the clipping thing is scary. It's like I showed the clipping to like very, very casual Formula One fans, like the ones who watch like 2 races a year, and they were like, what the hell is going on? Because the thing is, most people, when they tune into Formula One, they're like, okay, we are going fast, and the cars are like being pushed. And when you see the speed just drop at the end of a straight, that is scary. And there is a certain point where you do think, if it happens, if someone runs out of deployment as someone else is taking their slipstream, you could end up with a huge shunt. And I feel like it will happen at least once. If it doesn't happen once, I think we'd be quite lucky.
If it's going to happen anywhere, it will be Monza, Baku, and Mexico. But also the start at Spa, braking for La Source with those kind of race starts, there's going to be a big shunt as well.
But also, I'm hoping it would just be like the Ricciardo Verstappen crash from 2017, where it's just like one car rear-ends the other, and they just like go towards the turn, and not one car goes barrel rolling across the track.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that Formula One might lower the power of the battery, like it is was suggested before the first race, just to limit all these problems? You know, the super clipping, the difference in speeds. There was a proposal to reduce the battery power from 350 kilowatts to 300 kilowatts.
The problem is, if you reduce the battery power, you've then got to increase the ice power, because if you don't do both, it means that because yes, it would reduce the super clipping, but it would mean that the cars are just slower. It would there'd be nothing to replace that displaced energy.
They'd be like only marginally faster than Formula 2 at that point, and probably slower than Super Formula.
That's the issue you'd have.
Yeah.
I think that it's a good idea in principle, but you need to find something to replace it. And unless they're going to offer them more ice power somehow, which I don't think is possible, because I think they're trying to develop as good as they can anyway. I think we just need to give it some time, because the the rear axle regen is going to just keep getting better and better, and this is as bad as it's going to be. And at the end of the day, if you want to have anyone to blame, just blame Audi, because they were going to have front axle regeneration. We're going to have none of these issues. And then they come in and everyone's like, oh, well, we don't want to have front axle regeneration because they did it in LMP1. And it's like, does it really matter? That LMP1, when did that go bust? Was it like 2016, 2017? Like it was a long time.
LMP1. I thought we
LMP1.
had that.
Pardon?
I thought we still had that.
No.
Or no, LMP2. LMP1 wasn't hypercar, was it? No, it was. That's what hypercar.
It was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, would it have really made a difference? Like, yes, they would have had an advantage, but Mercedes have an advantage. They had an advantage in 2014 when they got a head start on everyone, and no one tried to ban it, or they might have tried to ban it, but it didn't go through. So do what's good for the best of the sport, and not what's good because all the teams vote against it. Like the FIA, in a way, does need to take more control and just say, actually, no, shut up. We'll give you front axle regeneration, because otherwise these cars are dog shit, and this is what we get. But yeah, it's going to get better. The energy regeneration is going to get better. They're going to be able to fill the batteries more and not have as much super clipping. This is going to be as bad as it's going to be.
I mean, the more long-term solution is that they need to increase the battery capacity if you don't want to get so it doesn't run out of energy as fast. But that is probably not going to happen, because that means, well, not this year certainly, because that would mean completely redesigning the batteries and everything else that goes with that. Of course, another solution is to just scrap these stupid woke hybrids and just bring back V10s. Like, even if it got really, really bad this year, and everyone was like, the sport's terrible, I don't want to watch anymore, and the drivers, because again, they were all complaining after the race except George. If they keep complaining, they might think we do actually need to find a solution here. Even as a short-term measure, we could say, okay, from 2026, the teams that are on the grid now that were there 20 years ago, just bring out your old 2005 V10s, like the old, Ferrari, Mercedes, God forbid, Cosworth and Honda.
Cosworth. I was going to say, imagine you end up with Toyota Haas Cosworth.
Yeah, something like that. It's you got 4 of those. Just distribute them around, and we'll put in the rule, because those engines were designed to last for 2 race weekends. So you keep that in, and we'll get rid of this stupid rule on how the number of limits, and just do that as a short-term measure. And then you can spend that time designing an actual V10 that runs on biofuels, ready for 2027. And problem solved. And the cars look the way they're supposed to look. We've got that down. They just don't sound or drive like they should. And just do that, and maybe listen to the fans, and we'll have something. Because this is the thing about, ever since we've had the hybrids in 2014, in the popular culture, people associate Formula 1, they associate it with that noise of the screaming V10s. And we haven't had that. And the cars sound better this year, but still not. The race starts, because that they had to do that pre-start thing before the lights came on. They sound like Hoovers. It's just it's all a bit bizarre, and it's just not. It's just getting very annoying now.
Yeah, I do wish Ciaron was here for this part, because I feel like he wouldn't have been as nice as we've been. He would have been so annoyed with all of this. But yeah,
I hope that the prediction I heard comes true, and on different tracks we're gonna see the engines with a smaller turbo being more advantaged by the nature of the track, because frankly, Mercedes and I think also Audi went down the road of the large turbo, and that means they get more power from the engine, so they can recharge more. All very good effects that cascade into each other to amount to a quite a substantial advantage. But then the start, for example, is a huge mess for these teams. I mean, I follow the telemetry from the live timing, and Fernando Alonso went on the limiter, went on the power before the start. Once the lights were already, the red lights were already counting down to the start. And Leclerc and Hamilton the same. It was only the Mercedes engine and Audi that needed the pre-start. So, there's an entire procedure just for teams that decided they didn't want to do a good start and they wanted another advantage. And then they put themselves into a dangerous position. And so the FIA had to bail them out with the pre-start procedure. I don't look kindly upon this, but I understand that you can't race otherwise. So,
Yeah, and it's quite unfair. Well, before we go into Ferrari, I think we should still mention the Antonelli weekend, because while Russell was having the calmest time of all drivers, and just enjoying his time at the top of the timing sheets, and basically, I think he knew in Q1 that he was winning the race. Mr. Antonelli from Saturday morning onwards wasn't even sure he would be able to take part in quali. It was pretty much, I think it would have been done for him if Verstappen didn't crash, or it would have been very tight. And yeah, in the end, qualified P2. Then even during the race, has a bad start, comes back up the positions, and then finishes P2. So yeah, big contrast between the drivers, and I feel like there's a bit of frustration from the fans there as well, because in 2014 and 2016, we had Mercedes running away, but it was between two drivers who would fight each other. In the 1980s, with the McLarens, Prost, Senna. In the mid 90s, with the Williams, it was Villeneuve and Hill. And this year, if we're honest, Antonelli's not going to challenge Russell. So I feel like that's also a big part of the frustration.
I wouldn't be so pessimistic if I was being honest. Like, although Antonelli did have a bad start and then came up to P2, he was still close. He was like 3, 4, 5 seconds off George at the end. It was something like that. And again, it wasn't a good weekend from him. He crashed more often than he should have, and he was very lucky to not start last and have to fight his way back through the pack like Max did. But considering that Antonelli last year was putting on a couple of performances where he outshone George, I'm not expecting him to challenge for the title, but I am expecting him on some weekends to provide at least some competition. So the idea that it's not going to be Hamilton Rosberg, it's not going to be Prost Senna, but I believe that it's not just going to be a walkaway title for George. And also, as I say, if Ferrari get more opportunities on different tracks, and if Red Bull, we haven't fully seen the potential of Red Bull because Hadjar blew up and Max started last. So what I'd say is just wait a little bit, I think, because again, Antonelli, he's got a lot more room to improve in terms of the fact that he's in his second season and Russell is in his 7th, 8th season. He's got a lot more room to improve. And if he's in his second season, 4, 5 seconds behind George after such a bad start? And I mean, yes, he got bailed out by the virtual safety car. Well, not bailed out, but the gaps were frozen. He could easily be a threat in quite a lot of races. And yes, he might be more error prone like we've seen, but I wouldn't be so pessimistic to say that we're just going to have Russell dance off into the distance and Antonelli's not going to challenge him.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first race. I don't think it's truly representative for any team, but he had, as well as his crash in practice, I mean, he was under investigation, 3 times or something in qualifying because there was that unsafe exit. And then when the cooling fans were left attached to the car, it was annoying because I was watching a replay of qualifying because it was in the middle of the night, but they didn't cut out the red flags. And the thing is, the red flags could have been avoided because had Lando not hit one of them and shattered it into a million pieces, you could have, instead of red flagging it and being like, okay, we've red flagged it, it's taken 10 seconds to pick that up, so now we have to sit here for 10 minutes because that's what the rules say, is that you need some kind of equivalent of the VSC, or like a really, really localized, a localized double or triple yellows, just, and tell them on the radar, okay, between turns 2 and 3, just slow down, no one's doing any laps, and just for 10 seconds while this guy picks it up, instead of doing red flags, because it just creates such needless delays. But that, once Lando ran it over, it's like, well, we can't, you have to stop then, basically.
I mean, wasn't what you just described what happened in the race when Perez lost the piece of wing, and so the virtual safety card it, Marshall on track, took the piece, and back to racing?
I mean, that was the fastest part of the circuit, and they still let it happen. It's like you could have just done. I mean, in that case, because it hadn't been, it was only 2 pieces. But once Lando had hit that thing, it was spread all over the track, and it's like, well, at that point, the road is going to be blocked. The track's going to be blocked by the marshals sweeping stuff away, and the risk of punches and that. But until that moment, it's like, we don't need to stop for 10 minutes. Just slow down, let them grab it, and let's carry on.
I was almost going to say that F1 needs spotters like they have in NASCAR and IndyCar, but I've actually just thought of a better idea. Why don't we bring back the communication directly between race director and not between the teams, but between the drivers, and not a two-way communication system, just the race director. So you can say there is debris on the exit of turn 2, like Formula E have it. Formula E have it where you hear the race director talking to the drivers
as well.
Pardon?
I think WEG have it as well.
Yeah, you need that, because even if you got all of the race engineers to do individually, that will probably end up taking way longer. Yeah. Especially with the Ferrari engineers speak at half the pace of the British ones as well. And
yes, so obviously, what you do is you have a line where they can just override, like middle of a radio message, cut off the engineer, bring them in, and say, actually, debris on the exit of turn 2, avoid the right hand side of a circuit. If you're on a fast lap, sorry. Eventually, double wave. You can have localized double wave yellows. And you can just say, if you go above a certain speed during this, you get a 1 million place grid penalty and you get ejected into the sun.
Yeah.
But I feel like now is a good time to move on to P3 and P4, who I guess did better than slightly expected. It was disappointing from Ferrari at the start of the weekend because after FP2 they suddenly seemed, I mean, that's when the Ferrari fans' disappointment really creeped in, because in FP1 they had hope, and then in FP2 Mercedes really removed the sandbags. But in the end, I think they'll be quite hopeful because Leclerc and Hamilton had very good races. However, there is still this inexplicable Ferrari strategy that I feel is going a bit under the radar, at least for mainstream media, because if they don't mess that stop up, then surely they'd be like at least much closer to Antonelli.
It's also because it's like it was a stage of the race, the first one, where track position is kind of irrelevant that early on. If it was right near the end of the race, you could argue yes, but also because they'll have seen from the opening laps how easy it is to overtake people. But it was just them being kind of. I mean, the second time their hands were a bit more tied because the pit lane. Well, it did get closed eventually, but they let some people in first, and so they probably could have snuck in. And at that point, I mean, I was looking at this and thinking, I wonder if we're going to have like a 2020 moment where they go in and haven't realised it's closed and then get massive penalties or something. But there's just them trying to be different from everyone else, and it didn't work. And without that, one of them would have been on the podium, certainly, and possibly won the race.
I mean, I have to disagree. I don't think Ferrari made a strategy blunder. I think there was a manifest inferiority of the Ferrari car with respect to the Mercedes. And so whatever choice Ferrari picked, they were unlikely to do better than P3, P4. And at most, we can discuss which was the best decision to not get P3 and P4. But that's the minor point of the entire race. The point was As I said, I think Leclerc was in the lead because Russell was not taking any risk, while Charles was more than willing to put the car into the wall to try and make an overtake. And so Russell just bid his time as soon as he could get out from the Ferrari. He took the opportunity. So if Ferrari had pitted Leclerc or Hamilton, Mercedes was gonna keep Russell out and maybe Antonelli in, or if both Ferrari pitted, then both Mercedes stay out. And as it happened, both Ferrari stayed out, so both Mercedes pitted, and they got their track free ahead to do 1 second faster than the Ferraris. And then when the Ferrari pitted with fresher tires, they were still faster than the Ferrari. So I don't see a way in which Ferrari could have won the race other than keeping Leclerc first and just hoping Leclerc somehow hustles his way in front of the Mercedes through sheer what's the word? Through sheer dumb luck, dumb massive risk, and other stuff.
Force of will, maybe.
Yes,
Yeah.
force of will sounds
Once 2024.
appropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I simply don't see a way in which Ferrari could have won the race. When Mercedes is able to do better than you despite having older tires, and Mercedes was still able to go to the end, so Mercedes didn't have to pit again. And even if Mercedes instead had made the strategy blunder, and so let's say a scenario in which Ferrari pits, and then Mercedes also pits under the first safety car, and so Mercedes exit still behind Ferrari, and there's no difference in tire. Then simply all Mercedes has to do is wait until halfway to the race, pit Russell again, and then Russell is gonna be 1 second faster per lap, has 28 laps to recover 20 seconds of a disadvantage, and so he's gonna reach Leclerc on lap 50, 1 second faster per lap is gonna make the overtake. So you see that there is no real scenario in which Ferrari wins the race. So how could it be that Ferrari made a strategy blunder?
With hindsight, I think that's the best way to look at it. I think that looking at it when it was happening, I was still surprised that they didn't at least split the strategy. But yeah, that's a very good way to look at it. I think for Ferrari fans and for especially for the fans of a certain driver, at least Lewis Hamilton wasn't utterly horrendous. I mean, he struggled in qualifying. By struggled, he was like 2 tenths off of Charles. That's fine, but at least he didn't make an embarrassment of himself. Now, what Lewis needs to do for the rest of his season is have that be his average weekend. He can't be dropping absolute clangers like he did in Las Vegas, like he did in other races. And yeah, Charles did what he was expected to do, delivered the performance the car was capable of. Lewis did sort of as well. But if Lewis wants to try and resurrect his reputation, that needs to be his average weekend. Because I think that now I've seen this. If this is his average weekend, I think he can beat Leclerc in a race or two. Maybe Silverstone, maybe the tracks he's good at, like Hungary. But I think we're all of the opinion and we're all of the disposition that he can't beat Leclerc straight up in the championship or in a fair fight, essentially. Because I think that Leclerc would pull it out of him in the end.
I mean, it was interesting during the race. I don't really remember hearing much from Leclerc on the radio. We heard a lot of Hamilton's radio, and he was complaining a lot about their strategy and everything else. But then after the race, he was very positive in the media pen and was saying, to be honest, the car works well, it's good, and because I guess he can see it's a clear. And he was saying this during testing as well that he likes these cars more than the previous ones. It's just that everyone is trying to get their heads around the energy management side. And yeah, so I mean, last year famously had no podiums. I think this year he more than likely will get podiums, possibly a win or two. We'll have to see how the races go. But as it is, Mercedes are probably still going to clear house, but Ferrari are going to be closer to them than it at first seemed.
Yes. I think it'll be interesting to see how Monaco goes, because if, let's say, Leclerc starts on the front row and he just into Sander Vogt, for example, and just goes straight to the apex of turn one because he's got a better start, I think it'll be more interesting then because although, and again, we talked about overtaking at Monaco, I think that although overtaking is much easier, I think at a track like Monaco, unless you're going to send a dive into a Nouvelle Chicane or maybe into Sandoval, it's going to be very difficult. And yeah, I think that we want to see what happens. We want to see what happens in the end. But I think Ferrari are the only team that can actually, unless we have, because we haven't seen the full performance of Red Bull. We haven't seen Max actually qualify, and we haven't seen what would eventually have happened with Hadjar's race. Because I don't think I'm not sure how many laps it took for his fault to develop. I'm not sure if it was just a
It was what
spontaneous.
25 laps in, wasn't it, when he
Yeah.
retired? It wasn't that far into the race. But I mean, Monaco would be interesting because for Leclerc, it's his home race, but also that's historically speaking, that's one of Lewis's weakest circuits.
Yes.
I mean, I say weakest. He's only won there what 3 times?
Twice.
I can't. Yeah, twice. Oh, is it only twice? It's 2008
2008
and
2019.
2016 as well.
Okay, so yeah, maybe.
But that was a free win because of Red Bull. But then he got denied the win the year before, I think. So he's got 3 wins there.
Yes.
But otherwise, there's some pretty shoddy performances like 2009, 2011, etc.
Yes.
21, 2017.
And it's arguably Leclerc's best track. So
yeah, even though 2021 happened and everything else, but a lot of it is forces outside of his control that means that things go wrong there. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, the third team results-wise would be McLaren. So, as it is, Lando is unlikely to win the championship this year, and Oscar Piastri definitely isn't winning the championship this year.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know how. To be fair, I tuned into the race. I set my alarm to wake up at 3:55, so I didn't see what happened to Oscar, but I eventually did, and it's embarrassing. I don't see why on the laps to the grid they are actually pushing. Not they shouldn't be pushing at all. They should be making sure the gears work, making sure the brakes work, making sure everything works. Don't use the curbs. What are you doing? That genuine. It was such a stupid moment. Lando, I mean, we obviously don't know car performance exactly, but it looked like he extracted what the car was capable of. I mean, McLaren, they could have spent like to be fair, they couldn't have spent as much time as they did last year, developing next year's car because they had such a threat from Max, especially right at the end. But it could have just been off year. It's not going to be the worst title defense in history, at least not points wise. But
it won't be a Jody Scheckter.
It won't be a Damon Hill or anything like that. Yeah, but yeah, I think I mean, Oscar showed good potential in qualifying and in practice, but yeah, you can't be doing that. You really can't. Like, if he's just going to keep doing these silly mistakes and just kind of having these races where he just drops an absolute, I'm going to use the word again, clanger, then yeah, this is not good for McLaren. But yeah, not a terrible start to the season, but it's much of a nothing burger.
He did say though that I think in the interview that basically he got like a power surge of like 100 kilowatts as he was going over the curve from the battery, and that was what caused him to.
And then Zach Brown denied that and said there was no problem with the car after the race.
Right. There's just him being, because if it was that, it's like, okay, well, it's just teething stuff because they're all getting used to this new stuff. But it happens more often than you would expect. People crashing on the way to the grid, like we've seen.
It's been more in recent years as well, because that's where, like, when I first started watching F1 back in 2012, it hardly ever happened. And now, like, you saw Verstappen in Hungary one year, obviously. I'm trying to think of the other one.
Grosjean did it twice, I think. There was
Perez.
Brazil 2016, yeah, Perez did one. Lucas de Grassi, Suzuka 2010, he did it as well.
Perez twice nearly did it, but he didn't. But twice he nearly did it.
Yeah.
But Alonso was... Okay, that was during the formation laps. That's different.
Yeah, just in general, why don't we just like make sure the car works, make sure the gears work, make sure that, as I said, make sure the brakes work, make sure everything is working, and don't use curbs, because that's what I think that's why he dropped it, because he just got on that outside curb and it once the car compressed, it just had no rear end grip.
Vettel crashed there in 22 in exactly the same way as well during the race.
Yeah.
Something that maybe went unnoticed is just how many problems were on Lando's car. So he was behind with the learning curve in all free practice sessions. Then in qualifying, when he was getting up to pace, he hit the air cooler debris, and so he had to complete Q3 with the front wing that was scraping the ground because it was basically broken. And so he had an incredible mess of a weekend, and nobody really took notice. And he finished fifth, kept Verstappen behind. And that's honestly a very good weekend,
Yeah.
even by Hamilton, Alonso, Verstappen standards. That was a very good weekend by Lando.
We'll just need to wait
Definitely
for a
worthy
normal.
of a world champion.
We'll just need to wait for a normal weekend to come around where he doesn't have 5 million issues, just to see what the reference point is.
Yeah, the reference point is fourth best car because
Yeah.
let's not kid around. The Red Bull was faster.
And if
Yeah.
had Piastri started the race, he would have finished 5th or 6th probably.
Yeah.
I'm really keen to see if the order we saw in Australia that was so clear is also the order we see in other races, because we know that Australia sometimes is not as indicative as other circuits, but it looks so clearly like a Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, McLaren top four right now, and that's not fun, especially with what happened in 2025, where anything could basically happen. It's not nice when you know exactly who are meant to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Is
There
it?
there aren't
Oh,
many significant changes in the running order actually from last year that elsewhere. It's not like in 2009 there were a lot of changes. In 2014 there wasn't much different other than Mercedes are now amazing. And in the ground effects, it was like Ferrari are better and Mercedes are a bit worse, but it's basically the same. And this time, it's like Mercedes are amazing, McLaren are a bit worse, Aston Martin are their own thing, and everything else is more or less the same as it was last year. It's not changed enormously.
But I think one thing about what you said on 2014, which we can also mention on McLaren, in 2014, all the customer cars were very much helped by, well, not all. McLaren wasn't, well, they were at the start, but Williams and Force India, they were doing really well thanks to the engine. And I feel like that also does not get mentioned as much as it was 2 months ago, that people thought that it would be a power unit season, and Alpine and Williams were getting hyped up a lot, McLaren were getting hyped up a lot, and it doesn't seem that way at all. It doesn't seem like having the Mercedes engine is helping teams that much. So when people are saying, "Oh yeah, Aston Martin could have been doing so much better with the Mercedes engine than the Honda engine," I'm sure they would have done better, but it's not like 2014 where having a Mercedes engine means you're going to qualify PE6.
yeah, I suppose. I think the gaps will just keep getting closer and closer, though. I think people are where they are now, and then I think once people realize the best ways to save energy, the best ways to make new regen, well, they'll eventually converge to a singular point by the end of the regulation set. Anyway, I'm not sure how close it will be up until then, but I think we will eventually get to a point where the guys who are second, third, fourth, fifth basically converge into one, even if Mercedes are off in the distance, for example.
Yeah, because at the moment the field spread is about 5 seconds, which is bigger than it was like when HRT was around. It's quite something. But that's mostly down to Cadillac because Cadillac is so far off the rest of the grid. But they'll close up, and like we said, also give it half a dozen races, and we'll start seeing a bit less variance in terms of battery usage and strategy because everyone will have worked out what's the best way to do everything, and that's when I fear things will actually get very dull, and we're no longer in that sort of trialing experimental phase of things, and then we'll get more complaints about this sucks and we need to change something. I think, yeah. Yeah, Red Bull. So we couldn't really see again. Max didn't set a time. I mean that was that accident was what the rear's locking. So that's just to do with too much rearward brake bias, but that's going to be something to do with the battery as well. So I'm not entirely sure what was going on on there.
Apparently, there was also a dodgy downshift. Something about
I mean,
that.
They kept replaying it, and the commentators were like, "Yeah, that sounds funny." And I was like, "What am I meant to be listening for? Like, it doesn't." It's like I'm not going to be able to work that out from it. But it was just,
I was going to say, usually a spike in revs is what you're looking out for, but I didn't really hear it either.
yeah. But like, it was just a little mechanical thing. But even so, Max, he went from 20th to 5th, so he did his thing. And
Yeah.
Hadjar, I mean, that okay. First of all, so to qualify
And
third,
56. Didn't get Lando.
oh, 6th, yeah. But to qualify third, I mean, I know it's already one race in, but everyone's getting excited. It's like maybe now they've actually found the teammate, the number 2 driver they've been yearning for so long. But I don't know. He was falling quite far behind until the retirement. There was a very large gap to the top 4. But it's far better than what fucking Yuki was doing last year.
I mean, for 5 years, we didn't have a guy do anything near that. That's my point. Like, unless Verstappen actually is going to qualify in the next race with a 1 second advantage over P2, which is not going to happen, I just think that Hadjar's done really, really well there. Because obviously Verstappen was not there, but I feel like people are underestimating the fact that we had a second Red Bull in the top 3. That has not happened in so long, and we were so used to the top 10 having only one Red Bull, and that being Verstappen. And I think that's going to change a lot that they have 2 cars now.
I think there's a bit of Yuki Tsunoda revisionism going on here because Perez, especially, he got pole positions, he got second places, he got third places in qualifying in the first half of the season in 2022, 23, and 24.
Yes. Well, 23, 24, that was starting to happen much less.
It was, but still, at the start of those years, he was mostly there. What I want to see is how it goes through the rest of the year, because it's always been the case that Max's teammates start off somewhat close, and then towards the end of the year, the gap gets further and further away and further and further away.
Unless you're Liam Lawson.
Pardon?
Unless you're Liam Lawson.
Yes.
Then.
What I want to see where Hadjar is in Monaco, and then what I see is where he is in Hungary, where he is in Singapore, where he is in those later races later on in the year. If he can keep this gap, if he can continue qualifying P3, if he can continue being in the ballpark, being in the top 5, being in the top 6, top 7, top 8, well done. You get a medal. You're a good teammate. But we have to wait for that to happen, because we said this with Perez. People were saying at the start of 2022, is Perez the one? Yeah, they were saying at the start, they were saying that with, I believe, with Albon, when he nearly won in Brazil, is he the right one? And then it turns out no, because people base it off of one race. So I'd be a bit cautious to say that Hadjar has done a great job, but can he maintain this great job? Because Max is going to keep wanting his car to be sharper and sharper, even if the main focus of development is going to be on the energy deployment. He's still going to want the balance of that car to be how he wants it. And if Hadjar can't handle that, I mean, the cars are a bit better for handling and for balancing towards driver preferences. So maybe it will be a bit better. But I'm not prepared to say that Hadjar is the fix yet.
Okay. Well, I guess we move on then to the midfield, and someone we talk about sooner than normal is Haas. Yeah, very pretty car. I like how the car looks. Both drivers had a very, very good start, which is pretty critical for Behrman to get that P7. Ocon ended up being just very invisible. I mean, his big complaint after the race was, yeah, the start was amazing, but the pace just doesn't exist, and there was nowhere to go. So he missed out on points, but yeah, no, Behrman got a point, and so he got 6 points. So that's a good start for them.
I wouldn't be so quick to say that Behrman had a great start, because I think he was like 12th early on. He was outside the points for most of the first 10, 15 laps. It was the second virtual safety car that gave him the advantage, because I believe he pitted alongside, I think it was Verstappen and Norris. There was someone else who was around him.
There was a bit of a close call in the pit lane, if I remember.
Yes. Yeah. And it was then when he got ahead of Ocon because Ocon was ahead of him that entire time. Ocon was the one who made up 5 positions on the start and had a great start. But it was at that point where Behrman took the advantage. I think Behrman generally had more pace than Ocon once he got into clean air. That's generally how it was last year. But yeah, I think the Behrman did a good job. Obviously, there were retirements and stuff in front of him and stuff like that. So maybe the car isn't there on pure pace, but Behrman out-qualified Ocon by, 2 tenths, and he was better than him in the race. He just needs to keep doing that because we saw Ocon is one of those drivers who at the moment is looking at potentially being out of F1 if Behrman keeps dunking on him. And Behrman's the one who's looking at that second Ferrari seat if Hamilton keeps not underperforming, but not performing as well as Leclerc, and he's going to want into that seat. So, yeah, he's in a good position at the moment. Yeah, it wasn't an outstanding drive by any stretch. It wasn't to Mexico, but I still would put him. Well, we'll get to the tops and flops later. I won't actually say where I put him just yet.
What do you think happened with Ocon? Do you think he lost all that time stuck behind Gasly and Bortoleto fighting when Berman instead managed to get himself in clean air and then could just do his own race? Or do you think that Ocon just was more limited than Berman? Because I can think Ocon fighting the entire race with Gasly, and so that just impeding his entire race.
Well, I didn't see Ocon. I didn't. I do remember his battle with Gasly because they made contact.
Yes.
But yeah. I mean, obviously, I didn't follow his entire race. But yes, if he was stuck around those guys for most of the race, obviously that's going to affect his pace because energy deployment. And we keep saying that energy, but when you're in a battle, your main focus is track position, and you can't save the battery, and you can't just keep you can't keep that extra reserve special. So yeah, maybe that's the case because as like Behrman had that issue in the first 15 laps. He was stuck behind, maybe not slower cars, but stuck behind cars, and he couldn't get by them. So once he got in clean air, he was fine. Maybe it was the same with Ocon, just reverse, where he spent most of the race rather than just the first 15 laps. So maybe what I want is for those two to be pretty close because when Ocon is performing, he's a great driver, and when Behrman is performing, he's also an excellent driver. So, yeah, they have a lot of potential past this season. If they are, let's say, the best of the rest in the midfield, which we'll get to teams like VCarb in a second or Racing Bulls in a second. But if they're at least like the first or second best team in F1.5, if you will, that could be a great little scrap between Behrman and Ocon because Ocon does need to resurrect his reputation. I think a lot of people reflect badly on him, what happened towards the end of last year. And yeah, I think that we've got a position where it's going to be entertaining, this midfield battle. If Mercedes piss off into the distance in the front, we can watch Behrman, Lindblad, and Ocon scrap over P7, 8, 9, 10.
So then if we go to Racing Bulls, well, the new kid on the block, Lindblad, that wasn't a bad first go. I mean, incredible start. He went from 9th to 3rd. But then at the end of the day, he finished 8th, so he only gained 1 position, and that was from Piastri not starting the race. But he did everything right. Did a hell of a lot better than his teammate, who had a really crap start, nearly caused a massive accident, and then just vanished. I mean, that's really not the first race you want to have against a complete rookie, especially when your seat is pretty precarious as it is. So if Lawson doesn't step up, I think we'll be saying goodbye to him at the end of this year.
You raised your hand first, so you go first, Nedzo.
I was going to say, is Lindblad's performance in Australia the best rookie race we've seen since Felipe Nasr in Australia 2015? Or even further back?
Okay, well, last year Antonelli went from 19th to 4th, didn't he?
16th to 4th, but it wasn't all due to him. It was a wet race and there was chaos and all that sort of stuff. It wasn't all like he did that all on his own.
Yeah. Oh, who's done better since then? I mean, Joe and Tsunoda got points on their debuts.
Behrman had different circumstances, I suppose, but was that as good as Lindblad? I'm not
People were
sure.
talking a lot about that Tsunoda P9 in Bahrain at the time.
Yeah, I mean, Behrman's debut, I think that was to go. He went from 11th to 6th or 7th or whatever it was. And that was
Sargent?
without FP1, FP2. Sargent's first race was okay, wasn't it?
Yes, I think he was 10th in Bahrain.
No,
Was
no,
it 10th?
he was outside the points. He only got points in Kota, or a point.
Oh, yeah.
Do one in
Oh, yeah.
Abu Dhabi.
17th. That wasn't good.
Yeah.
It nearly crashed into the window licker. Yeah, probably is. It was a good one, I think. Yeah.
Yes,
better than Hajar's.
How did Sergei Sirotkin do on his debut?
I remember this. He lasted about 5 laps, and then the car broke down.
Oh,
Of course he does. Of
he was
course
running
he
at 90.
somehow remembers Sergei
Well,
Sirotkin.
I did a video on him like 5 years ago, and yeah, he's the one everyone forgets.
So that justifies you remembering his debut, fair enough.
Yeah.
But what we're saying is he didn't really put a foot wrong all weekend. Like we saw with Behrman last year in Australia. We'll talk about Australia, where and even with the other drivers last year, Doohan spinning off on the formation on like lap 1, Hadjar on the formation lap. We saw nothing like that from Lindblad, and I think he is a lot more. People were saying like last year that Hadjar was like a mini Alain Prost for some reason because he was kind of sort of consistent with his performances, but he wasn't really, and he's French. I think that Lindblad is definitely more down the Alain Prost route. He's very mature. He speaks very eloquently in interviews. He's clearly very capable and very grounded. If this is the peak of his performances, obviously that's not great. But if this is just the start, I mean, what is the limit? Because there was a chance in the early part of the race. He was like P3, P4, and once everyone gets grounded in their performances, we could see a lot. And also with Lawson, if this if Lindblad is truly like this generational talent, it could be the end of Lawson because I think it's obvious that he was a yardstick. If Lindblad was better than Lawson, then he's obviously something special. If he's not better than Lawson, then don't keep him around. But if the gap is going to stay like this for the rest of the season, then Lawson has something to worry about because there was just nothing to say about Lawson's weekend at all, apart from the crash the near crash with Colapinto, and that's not what you want.
There was also qualifying. It wasn't either of their faults, but there was nearly that crash in the pit lane with both of them and Bortoletto.
Even I don't remember that, and I watched qualifying live.
Bortoletto just slowed down to a snail's pace for no reason, and Lawson was behind him, and then Hadjar.
Bortoletto was retiring from qualifying.
Oh, was he break? What was he? No,
I remember this now in the pit lane. Yeah, I remember this now.
He
had a car problem, Bortoletto, in qualifying.
Okay, yeah, that's what. Yeah, but I mean, there was no one's. Also, it was nobody's fault, but yeah, there was almost a huge shunt because Lindblad came in at like full speed. Yes, the thing is, over the radio, he sounds almost exactly like Lawson. So I was getting them sort of mixed up. I mean, it's very good. The radio is very good at kind of muddling accents and making everyone sound sort of quasi English. Like.
The one thing, Nedzo, I will say on Lindblad is it is the first race, and he had a reputation in Formula 2 for a lot of chaotic moments and could be quite rush. And he was causing a lot of, maybe not a lot of, but he was causing quite a few incidents in Formula 2 last year. And quite a few Formula 2 enthusiasts were like, maybe the step up isn't for now. In terms of raw pace, he has it, and he has always had it. But let's just wait in terms of seeing how composed he is, because it is undeniable that he is fast and that he will have great weekends this season. But I think we should just wait and see what happens on a bad weekend, because I mean, you made the comparison with Frost. I'm fully gunning for Lindblad, but I feel like we do need to nuance a bit that I would be surprised if he does not cause a single incident this year, because he does have a tendency to dive bomb and the like.
Another thing, sorry, quickly. Another difference actually with Hadjar and Lindblad with Prost is that they're not nearly as assertive as Prost was, because as soon as Prost came in, he was like, right, I own this team, you do whatever I say, everything has to go my way. And those two don't do that, and that's another element of being kind of having a winning
That's also just being
mentality.
a driver in 2026. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
think
but yeah,
anyone
it is. But also being in Hadjar's case, being Verstappen's teammate, you can't really do that because Verstappen's
Yeah.
doing that enough for everyone already.
Quickly on the aggression and racecraft point, Lindblad might be a bit brash. I mean, we didn't really see it this weekend, even though he was in many battles. At least he won't be. This is a bit of a tangent. At least he won't be as bad as Alex Dunn in the F2 feature race. Did anyone see that?
Yeah, that
No,
was.
but Alex Dunn, sorry, Peter, just before we just talk about this race, even last season, that guy has an issue. And it's really sad because he is very fast, but he does not learn at all. And I don't
Yes.
get it. Like, he keeps getting into really bad incidents and it keeps happening.
And on the radio, he blamed Stenshorn for him cutting across and chopping off his
Yes.
front wing.
It was
Like,
incredible what he said.
if I was
It
a
was
team principal, I'd get him into a dark room and I'd beat him about the head and be like, "You can't do this.
I mean,
You
that was incredible what he said. As
you
well.
are objectively wrong. Take like if it like isn't he part? Isn't he been signed by Alpine now?
Didn't he join
He
the
is an
Alpine
Alpine
Academy
driver.
like literally this week? I
If
swear it
if
was
I
really,
if I was
really
Flavio
recently.
Briatore, I would literally Flavio Briatore would literally take him into a dark room and do a John Cleland and beat him about the head, because that's just ridiculous. It was just ridiculous. I don't. Yeah.
You are saying that. You are saying that. I feel like Flavio might be the kind of person to be like, "Oh, Alex, I'm considering you for the Colapinto seat. Show your like McLaren teammate that you're better and be a twat to him." Like, I don't feel like Flavio is the kind of guy who will tell Alex that was bad. But I don't know how. I don't know if Alex has a management team, but if he does, it's not a good one.
I mean, what he said on the radio, and he was like, I see how things are going to be this year. That he's never finishing ahead of me again. I was like, this is like you're trying to. It's like this is like we have Prost Senna at home, basically. Like what's happened here.
He's going to become the Austin Hill of the Formula One categories. For those who don't know, Austin Hill is a NASCAR driver who is very fast, very good, but he's the most unlikable person ever because he gets involved in incidents and accidents, and he never apologizes, and he does basically the same things that Alex Dunn does, except I mean he's taken people out on purpose and all that sort of stuff, and it's basically the same sort of stuff that Dunn has done, except without the intentional takeout.
It's a bit chaotic done because he was a McLaren junior last year, and he did a couple of FP1s, didn't he? And then they just let him go.
I think he realized there was no pathway into the
Probably, yeah. Well, yeah, but that's the case because I mean Stenshorn is a McLaren junior. Ugo Chukwu is although he's waiting. Fornaroli,
sure.
Badoa's doing it. There's a couple of kart racers. There's I think
But the thing is,
whatever his name is,
Dunn definitely has the pace for Formula One, and I think he knows this, and his team knows this. So that's why he's moved into a place where, it is quite likely that once they're done with Colapinto, they will be looking at the academy. Whereas the other McLaren drivers, I think they're in there more for the opportunities that come with being with McLaren, which is you can transition into like a lot of pathways into motorsport, professional motorsport. Whereas, Dunn clearly has his sights set on Formula One, but he's crazy.
I mean, the thing is, why would you choose him over Paul Aaron or Kush Miney? Because they're not terrorists and they have some relatively experience as well.
Dunn is definitely faster, but
Kush definitely. I mean, Paul is the next best bet. Unless Flavio just wants to collect twinks like Pokemon or whatever, and that's all it is. But it happened Formula 3 as well. There was Louis Sharp and James Wharton had a really stupid crash as well.
Yes. And I genuinely saw people on Twitter trying to say that Louis Sharp wasn't at fault for rejoining from an off-track position with less momentum and keeping his nose in the gap that was never realistically going to work out. You can barely go through that corner at Australia side by side when both cars are cooperating and fully alongside each other. Never mind where one is sort of not there and one's rejoining from off track. and in general, like it's just stupid.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like James Wharton, he's on the FBI's most wanted list, but Louis Sharp was obviously at fault there. I mean, it was just the camera work was amazing because the camera cut away as soon as they went into the barriers, and just showed the Pramer pit wall, like responding to it. And it's like, what? It's like we're literally mid crash. You've had enough time to register. Oh, a crash is happening. Let's just go away from that and show the pit wall. Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of shit that went on in F2 and F3, so it was a crazy weekend all around. But yeah, I mean, the racing balls, I love. I'm obsessed with how that car looks. It is amazing.
It's your Roman Empire.
It is my Roman Empire. It's just so. It's the white wheel rims. It looks so sporty. It's like if AI turned like running trainers into a Formula One car. It's that sort of thing. I need to see.
It is white walls like a Volkswagen Beetle from the Herbie movies.
Yeah, but it needs like they should release merch of trainers that are just designed in the livery of that car. That'd be amazing. Yeah, great car. Audi next. Well, again, Hulkenberg didn't start the race because of some mechanical thing, but Bortoletto made Q3, and he finished in the points. So they're not. I mean, okay, they're not starting from scratch because this was Sauber, but that was relatively promising pace-wise, I guess.
I think that was really good from Audi, and again, a lot of things happened this weekend. I feel like people aren't really talking about Audi having a very decent debut and Bortoletto getting points. Bortoletto was catching Gasly at the end as well. So very promising, honestly, I feel. I expected worse. I expected them to not get points.
I mean, it's quite funny because Sauber was a team that was kind of bog standard, your average midfield team that kind of doesn't really do much. Like they have a couple of standout moments, but not really. And they'll just kind of mill around and get quite a few points and be the kind of bog standard midfield team. And now Audi are doing the exact same thing. I mean, with the Works Engine deal and with Gabby Bortoletto as this kind of future talent, could be something different. But yeah, good start, but they need to first of all make sure that both their cars work. But overall, good. Just a nothing burger, but nothing bad either. So yeah, Bortoletto's doing well. Work on this form because last year I thought he was pretty unremarkable. There were a couple of good races he had, but I thought he was worse than Behrman, Antonelli, Colapinto, and a couple of other drivers. I can't remember the other rookies. Hadjar, that's the one.
And he's the one that actually won Formula 2 as well.
Exactly. So like he was probably the most consistent of the lot. But when you're consistent and produce no spectacular performances like Colapinto did, like Hadjar did, like Behrman did, like Antonelli did, there's not really much to go on. And I hope that this he can build on.
Ace, what did you make of Audi's debut?
I have some doubts on what is the actual order of the top of the midfield, because in my opinion it is clear that Racing Bulls, Haas and Audi are very close in competitiveness, but I remain unsure who has the edge, because surely in qualifying Racing Bull was the best one, and I think there is no discussion about that, and Haas was the worst. But then you look into race pace, and Haas was the best one, even better than Racing Bulls. So Audi only had one car, and Bortoletto, I think he lost many positions at the start. Am I correct in saying this? None of us are sure. Okay.
I think he was among the ones who lost positions for the others to gain. Yeah, he got down to like P13, 14.
Yeah, but then in the race, he towards the end at least, he started making overtake, on Ocon and then on Gasly, and then he even had time to go and catch up to Lindblad, but not enough time to make the overtake. So actually, I'm not really sure what strategy he did, but there is some very positive aspect about Audi, and so Yeah, I think right now the question I have is the competitive order of those three teams. I think even though Alpine was fighting with them throughout the entire race, I think Alpine was advantaged in this particular track, and it won't be close to these teams in the following races.
Uh, so next is Alpine, or Alcides, as they would be now. So if we assume, based on qualifying, the pace doesn't look enormously different from last year, other than they're faster than Aston Martin and certainly Cadillac. But Gasly got a point, but Colapinto had, well, he had a bad start, and then he got that Colapinto and go penalty for the start, and so his race just didn't really get going, did it?
No. I think this is a make or break. Well, this is a make or break year for Franco. The problem with last year wasn't his race pace. I think you get those people who do data analysis, and although I don't particularly like every single aspect of data analysis because I think sometimes it can be a bit too introspective. When Colapinto was in clean air last year, he was just as fast as Pierre. But the problem was he was hardly ever in clean air because he qualified so much further behind. And that's the issue we had here. Luckily, a gap of 7 tenths in Q2 was only 2 positions because Gasly didn't get very far in Q1. No, Gasly got into Q3. Colapinto didn't. A gap of 7 tenths in Q2 was only like 2 positions, I think. So luckily, he wasn't too affected by that. But in the race, I didn't see anything. I mean, I think he did a couple of battles with a couple of drivers like Lawson and one of the Williams, I believe. But overall, yeah, he just needs to improve. He just needs to. That's just the thing. He needs to improve. He needs to build on the race pace he had last year. Massively improve his qualifying pace because that's the weird thing. He was beating Albon in qualifying pace in 2024, but I think because of the accidents he had towards the end of that year, he sort of backed off and reined himself in a bit, and that I think has lost him that overall pace. So that's the issue he has. I mean, you could also argue it's the first time I'm not sure if when he was in Formula 2 that he ever did Australia. He might have done it in 24. But
Well, he would have been 24. That was his only year in F2, wasn't it?
I'm not sure. I think, yeah. So maybe he did it once, but yeah, I don't think he's done China before. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes about there. But yeah, Colapinto just needs to improve. Gasly, I think it's safe to say that Gasly, now that Hulkenberg is washed, now that Perez isn't in the midfield anymore, he is the king of He is the king of the midfield. As the driver, he's the most well-rounded driver in the midfield. Behrman is a bit too error prone. Ocon turns up for 5 races a year. Lindblad's a rookie, so we don't know really what he's doing. Lawson is a bit mid. So yeah, Gasly's the king of the midfield, and I think if you put him in one of the if you put him in a Mercedes or a Ferrari, I don't think he does much worse than Antonelli or Hamilton. Even slightly better, I'd say, than someone like Hamilton.
But why is it that Alpine looked so well in Bahrain testing, and then they come here and basically Gasly got a point because he got lucky at the start. He was on the left side of the grid. On the right side, there was that massive slow-moving Lawson, which basically blocked the entire lane. And so Gasly found himself from, what was he, P13 up to P9.
P14, I think.
And,
yeah.
Yeah, and then, P9, you basically just keep everybody behind but Verstappen, and there's your P10. So I just think that why is Alpine so good in Bahrain testing and then not good in the races? It already happened last year, 2025, and then completely different rule set, it happens again. Weird.
I was going to say, to be honest, I don't really follow testing for this exact reason, where we don't know how much the teams are sandbagging, and maybe it's just a case simply that Alpine don't sandbag as much as everyone else. But yeah, they just need to build on what this is the same. I think I've said this a lot for every single driver and every single team, but they just need to build on what they've got now. I think to be honest, in terms of development, the team that gets energy regen done the best will be the team that improves the most. Because if you can eliminate or mitigate super clipping, especially in qualifying, especially even in race trim, you're going to gain. Like we saw at the end of the straight going into the fast chicane, people were losing 10, 15, 20 kilometers an hour. If you mitigate that entirely, that's easily 0.3 of a second just in one corner or in one section of a circuit. So I think that one team, I don't know, maybe everyone's going to do it. Most likely everyone's going to do it. But the team that masters energy preservation, it could be Alpine, it could be whoever, but they could easily go up the field. But Alpine generally just need to build. They need to try and keep Gasly with every ounce of their being. Colapinto needs to improve his consistency. And yeah, Flavio is quite quiet. We saw him in Drive to Survive being a bit of a bully. But other than that, he's been quite quiet this weekend, and I haven't really seen him around and about. Yeah. Great talk, guys.
Before we move on to the next team, I just want to say kudos to Colapinto for avoiding that massive crash.
Yes.
That got me gasping in my seat when I saw the replay.
I think that was a good reminder of how good all of those drivers are, because when you're comparing them with, literally the best of the best, it might seem like there's a huge gap, and then you see those reflexes and you're like, yeah, no, they're all superhuman. And
that was very Leclerc Austria F2 when he did that in Formula 2 in Austria.
I got reminded instead of there's a clip on the internet of I think the 80s, 90s. There's a stoller on the grid, someone who started way back, suddenly finds him in front of him, and instead of going left where everybody was going to avoid him, he goes right between the car and the wall. And basically, from the onboard, it looks as if the wall moves away to create the space, because there is not a car length to go there. But I don't know if you guys know about the video.
I can't remember.
Riccardo Paletti alternate timeline.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So our next team, I guess, is Williams. I saw hardly anything of them in the race. I mean, they didn't. We've known they had problems in testing. The car needs to go on a diet, basically. And they just milled around in the midfield. Near the end of the race, Sainz had some problems and he lost a lot of time. But otherwise, they just didn't really do anything, it's disappointing because they looked like they were really on the up last year. And they, as ever, they've invested so much time and effort into the car and it fucking sucks. So it's still not... they're really not where they should be.
Honestly, Williams, getting into like the teams, I thought we were going into Aston, because Williams, there's literally nothing I can think of. They've been completely anonymous this weekend, and the only thing I can say is people will be disappointed, because it looked from testing and from the rumors before the season that Williams would be competing for the points and maybe even higher. And in the end, that's not at all what's happening. So again, we'll see what happens with Williams, but a lot of good things were coming out of the off season, and in the end, seems like they've regressed, especially with the hype of last year with Carlos Sainz being good at developing the car and the good vibes. James Fowles looking like he's a good TP. Yeah. In the end, very much nothing from them.
Yeah, a nothing burger.
I mean, I think, and this narration also works for Aston, but I think for Williams, I think the important bit is the prospect, because they had to compromise their car entirely to be able to show up in Bahrain not even Barcelona, but just Bahrain way later, and they managed to do so by compromising their own car. So now they need time to uncompromise their own car and finally see how good it is. And yeah, until we see the actual potential of the car. So in a few months, when they start to bring updates to rectify whatever mistake the car has, until that moment, we really can't say how good of a work Williams was able to do in the winter, because clearly, if they bring an update and the car is 10 kilograms lighter and it has all the aero update, which currently I don't think it has any significant one, and suddenly they gain 1 second, 1.5 seconds, and they're at the top of the midfield. It will amount to very little the fact that they had this very slow and bad start to the year. Instead, if the car sucks even after halfway through the year, yeah, then it's really worrying.
Yeah.
So from one very old team to a brand new one, Cadillac. So yeah, Bottas's lap time for P19 was 4.7 seconds slower than pole position, which is quite a significant gap. And this was reflected in the race because both of them, I mean, Bottas retired halfway through in the pit lane, but Checo was just so far off the pace of everybody else. It was very similar to, as I said before, like HRT Marussia kind of competitiveness.
Yeah.
But you know, they are completely new to this. They're working on developing their own works engine, so they're having to use the Ferrari ones. It's baby steps, and all things considered, I mean, it's not like HRT in that, well, they actually started the race, which helps. And they do have more money, but it's baby steps, and they will close up. But at the moment, they have a lot of work to do.
I think it's because F1 has become so specialized, as we say, like up until like last year, the field spread was 2 seconds. And I think we took that for granted because everyone had been in Formula One for a very long time. Like Haas had been in Formula One for 10 years. Like there's not been a time in Formula One history where everyone has been on the grid for such a long time. Like you're looking at, even in the 2000s, you had teams like Toyota, Jaguar, Super Aguri, Midland constantly coming in. I know there were some of them were just evolutions of other teams, but there were lots of new teams coming in that were completely brand spanking new. And we haven't had that, as I say, since Haas. And I think we're starting to see just how hard it is when everyone knows what they're doing to get up to the same level as them. They have a great platform. They have two drivers who are experienced, have been in championship winning operations, have been in Formula One for. They might even be the most experienced lineup on the entire grid, unless Alonso is doing a lot of heavy lifting with Aston and is apart from Alonso at Aston. I think they are the highest.
They're third.
Lineup.
They're
Yeah.
third after Aston and Ferrari.
Ferrari. Oh yeah, Ferrari because of Hamilton. But yeah, considering that's the competition they have, they have a lot to build on. They need to make their cars less out of gaffer tape because the cars were falling. Like Perez and Bottas, I believe they both had issues. I think Perez's mirrors fell off, and part of his car fell off on the straight, which led to one of the VSCs.
It was like a rear wing end plate or something. It was quite a large piece that came off. Yeah,
it's a bit ridiculous, but the only way is up, I guess. So they have to. I think they were like 3 laps down. But even then, even 3 laps down, 4.7 seconds off the pace, they still weren't as bad as Aston Martin.
The Perez, there was an onboard when they finished the race, and there was the left wing mirror, which was just flapping away. And from what I understood, Cadillac had problems all throughout testing with the parts just breaking. So
I think they took Colin Chapman's philosophy a bit too seriously. I think they added too much lightness and made the parts maybe out of cardboard.
They simplified the design and build process too much at the same time.
Look, I think I want to draw a parallel between Cadillac debuting this year and when Haas debuted in 2016. because Haas didn't nearly have as many problems as Cadillac has now. And I know Haas took all it could take away from Ferrari, and so it started from a very strong platform. Cadillac is not doing that, but Haas, to do the aerodynamic development, basically delegated the entire thing to Dallara, an Italian company. And Cadillac isn't doing that. Cadillac is doing aerodynamics by itself. And, it's starting even worse off, not just of other Formula One teams. We expected that. But to start off worse than Dallara, which doesn't really do Formula One mainly, it just, I think it's a worrying sign. Even granted that it's an entirely new team starting doing everything by scratch totally, and I think it should have been better. They did the entire season just because 2025, I mean, just to develop a car that could run well, and the greatest achievement they could take from this race, the first of the year, is that they ended the race. It didn't run well, it didn't run fast, it just ran. That's the positive thing to take. I think they should have expected just a little bit more, okay? That it ran, and it ran without issues. Yeah, I think that was the bare minimum. And what they got is it just ran.
I'm going to disagree with this being so much worse than what Haas did, because as you said, Haas took a lot from Ferrari, Haas took a lot from Dallara, and Cadillac didn't. And I think Haas overall, like to begin with, obviously the support and development helps them. But I think now, because they are still using Ferrari parts, they are still maybe not using Dallara's help, but they are still very much attached to Ferrari. And that has in ways hampered them. We've talked about how the rear suspension and how all of certain different parts of the cars that are Ferrari spec and they have to develop around have affected them. I think that Cadillac have a lot more room for development because they aren't doing that. They can't take as much stuff from Ferrari. They can't take as much stuff because they are a works team. They can't say to Ferrari, please help us, and then when they already know in 1-2, I think it's 2 years time, they're not going to have Ferrari engines. They've already committed to not staying with Ferrari long term, so they can't ask them for those sort of things that Haas did. So I think that while yes, they started off a lot worse, I think also it is good to mention that generally the field spread in 2016 was a lot bigger than what it was, at least up until last year. And as I say, like you had Manor and Renault, I mean, were an involvement of Lotus, but they were kind of a bit cash strapped. And there were a lot of teams that hadn't had the same experience. Now I think F1 is the hardest to get into that it's ever been in terms of competitiveness because every team bar Haas has been on the grid in some form or another for at least 20 years. And they have that much experience, they have that much knowledge of regulation changes, and Cadillac have no prior experience to these type of like I say, like Audi LMP1 stuff. We talked about that. Like, yes, they've been doing a bit of World Endurance Championship racing recently, but other than that, they have no experience in racing, unless you want to count touring cars, which I'm not going to do. So I think the only way is up. I'm not going to say it's been good or it's been bad because we've not seen another team in this situation before. So I'm not going to say it's better than it should have been, it's worse than it should have been. It's just been. It's existed. It's ran to the end of a race. And as I said, it's better than what Aston Martin cooked up.
So yeah, let's move on to Aston Martin.
Hey, do you want to go?
I mean, okay, it could have been worse. It really could have been worse. I mean, qualifying, yeah, that was the thing. Alonso had a very good start, though. He got up to 10th place. And at that point, maybe they were thinking, wait, let's just hold on. Stop making it a test session. Maybe we'll get something from this. And I imagine they were thinking, because they knew, even though there weren't as many retirements as people were predicting, that if we just hold on, we might salvage a point if we can get to the end. But then it did turn into a test session. I mean, the window licker, forget about it. But Alonso kept going in and out of the pits, and it was like he'd pit and wait 10 minutes. It's like, okay, I've got the sensation back in my hands. Let's go and do some more. I think I only ever saw them run on like soft tires as well, because they kept stopping all the time. But pace-wise, Alonso's pace in that first stint was actually okay. He wasn't dropping off massively. Stroll was nowhere the whole race, but yeah, at least they haven't got permanent nerve damage yet.
Before Ace gets into his very green rant about the very green team, I will give Stroll some credit here, because at least he went into the race deeper than Alonso did. Because Alonso was in and out, in and about, you shake it all about. But Stroll went, I think he went at sort of like 35 laps before he came in. And credit where credit's due. They were saying that after 25 laps, they were going to be rattled to death and shaken beyond belief. But he was a lot better at surviving that than Alonso. Now, yes, he is about 20 years younger than Alonso, but or 15 years younger than Alonso. But I think it's still credit where credit's due. And I wasn't really focusing on Aston Martin anyway, because there were more pressing issues in the first half of the race. But yeah, I think that, but judging like Stroll being nowhere and Alonso being far ahead, when the car is as bad as it is, and when they knew that this was a test session anyway, I don't think we can really read much into that. Maybe Stroll was treating it exactly like a test session for the entire race, and was just driving at 80%. That as easily could be the case. But yeah, I said there was a lot of teams. The only way is up, and if they come down from this somehow, just bin it off. Just close the team down. Do an arrows. Do a super Aguri. Close the team down mid-season. But Adrian Newey, he's known for designing tight, awkward cars, and maybe at the end of the season, the engine will have improved, the car's reliability will have improved, the suspension or whatever it is that's causing these massive vibrations will have improved, and it's a semi-competent package. Maybe they can do what the Dream Williams scenario of bidding off one season and actually going to the next and doing well. And now this is not just bidding off a season. This is basically just running for the sake of running, because you have to, because you signed a Concord agreement. That's essentially what it is.
Look, let me pose a question to the both of you. Do you think Adrian Newey, in his interviews during the weekend, held anything back?
I saw like one of his interviews, but it was so because I was doing a news program on Friday, but I don't remember anything he said, to be frankly honest. What did he say? Help me.
I mean,
Say it, Peter.
I mean, well, declaring that your cars are actually a health hazard just to drive, I wouldn't say that's holding back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because even like Life and Andrea Moda and people like that, they didn't have cars that would cause nerve damage because the engine sucks.
Okay, so he said about his cars being life-threatening. Then he said how Honda completely screwed up everything. He didn't try to split the blame. He didn't try anything. He just said the engine sucks. He said immediately we only have 2 batteries because the other 2 died before we even started the weekend. He said that straight up. He said that he held nothing back. Okay. Absolutely, don't worry, he held nothing back. And so when at the end of the race, he had to make the team principal statement and yada yada, what he said was, we treated the race like a test session, where we did a few laps, then we stopped both of the cars, changed the setup, and went out again so we could learn more. And then we decided on Fernando that we wanted to preserve the life of the car, and so we retired him. And that's what Adrian Newey said. And knowing that he had absolutely nothing back during the rest of the weekend, I'm gonna assume this is the pure truth. And so this race was treated completely like a test session. Both cars pitted early, pitted and stayed in the pits for quite a while, simply to do some setup changes during the race. Alonso retired simply because his was the car that ran all Saturday, while Stroll instead didn't run at all on Saturday. and so clearly Alonso's car had more mileage, and so they pitted him, they retired him, so that they could race in China. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to race. The car would break. So the fact that the Stroll ran longer means nothing. The pace the drivers had when they ran means nothing, because who knows what setup they had. They also had different experience. I mean, Stroll did 15 laps on Friday and nothing else. What's the comparison? And yeah, even the start, the blind start from Alonso, he got lucky like Gasly. He was on the right side, on the left side of the grid, which was the right side to be on to have a good start. Then half of the grid started the race without any battery, because an article from Motorsport came up just an hour ago, and they basically explain during the formation lap and to do all the burnouts and yada yada, the teams, some teams completely miscalculated everything, and they had no battery, and so they did the first lap recharging the battery, and that explains why Alonso had such a was 10th. It's not he did something heroic. He got lucky. So that's what you bring home from this weekend. They did a test session. That's it.
Going back to the Adrian Newey point, you said, is this good? I mean, there are pros and cons to it, because I've just thought of some points. Obviously, Adrian Newey has been around Formula One for 35 years now, or even more than that. He was with the Fittipaldi team in the early 1980s.
45.
Yeah, more 45. And he knows what a good team is. He knows what a good engine is. He complained about the Renault engines with Red Bull at the start in the start of the turbo hybrid era, and he complained about the regulations. He's not afraid to complain, but and yes, that's good. You want to find the issues and be as direct as possible, and you want to listen to the people who have this success that Adrian Newey has. But at the same time, a lot of the reasons or a lot of the blame that was put on the McLaren Honda partnership was the blame game that was put between McLaren and Honda. That McLaren, it was the same. It was the same with a lot of teams in the past. A lot of engine partners. Prost and Peugeot is another one where you just get where the team principal goes, it's all the engine. It's all the engine. It's all the engine. We're building great chassis, and it's all the engine that's bringing us down. And that never benefits anyone. So yes, while it's good for the fans to see Adrian Newey telling Honda, "You're shit, build a better engine," is it conducive to anything? Is it going to actually thing? Because when Red Bull partnered with Honda and when Toro Rosso partnered with Honda, yes, the situation wasn't as bad. They weren't breaking down every race like McLaren Honda were, and like Prost Peugeot were, and like Aston Martin and Honda are now. But is it conducive to actual building this car up by saying your shit, do better? Because they know that their car is bad. So yeah, and also we don't also because of how bad the engine is, we don't know how good the chassis is, because it's unlikely that the Aston Martin has the fastest chassis but the worst engine. But it could be possible. And if that, then Adrian Newey is right to be as mad as he is. But is it like what McLaren? Because McLaren said, I believe in 2017 or before, that they had like the top 3 chassis on the grid, and then they got to 2018, had a Renault engine, which although wasn't fantastic, was still good enough to be better than the Honda, and they were sort of in the midfield and then fell off towards the end of the year. So, is it good for Adrian Newey to sit there going, yes, our cars are a health hazard, but it's all their fault. It's not our fault. It's not my fault.
I mean, Newey in his one of his conferences straight up said that they have the 5th best chassis on the grid right now. In this moment, the Aston Martin is 5th best chassis, so better than all the midfield, and the chassis is 3/4 to a whole second slower than Mercedes, and he predicts that with the development coming along the year, it might become the best chassis of the grid.
Of course he does. Of course he thinks that.
That's straight up of what Adrian Newey said. So there were rumors that Honda, to be able to race, Honda also said that they were confident that the cars could finish the race, and the only reason they dared to stop was because Adrian wanted to treat this as a test session. But it has to be remarked that the engine were 100 horsepower down, allegedly, to be able to run reliably. That's 100 horsepower down. Do you know the last time I heard of a team running down on 100 horsepower? That was the 2001 Minardi, because there's very different estimates about this. There's Motorsport Italy at some point said Minardi was 50 horsepower down. There's an Italian Monaco race in Italian commentary, and during the race they go over Minardi and they said, the car is 80 horsepower down. There's a Spanish commentary of the Spanish Grand Prix, and they say the car is 100 horsepower down compared to the other cars. And so I don't know when was the last time a team was so down on power, but the other comparisons are pretty dooming.
I think that Minardi engine, it was like 2 years old as well or something. It was pretty dated.
I think 3 years in 2001.
Yeah, but I mean, it is interesting that Newey has clearly been given permission by Lawrence or the board or whoever to be so upfront about all the problems. But at the same time, for him, it's very easy for him to blame the engine, and that because he has nothing to do with that. And when you read his autobiography, all the way through, he's blaming Ilmore and Mario Ilian for all of the problems at McLaren because he has nothing to do with that department. But it's also like another thing that is that people noticed it was middle of 2023 when they announced this deal with Honda. They didn't visit the factory for the first time until November last year. So on their side, it sounded like that wasn't much. They weren't really as prepared as they could have been. But that being said, Honda have really, when it comes to hybrid engines, they clearly just don't know what they're doing because they've dropped the ball so badly with this and running out of batteries and everything, and the nerve damage, and it's just like it can't. In this day and age with Formula 1, in the early 90s, it's like fair enough, but Formula 1 is so much more professional now that how they could still be messing this up this much. But Alonso is more optimistic than you would expect, considering all this, because you would think by now he would be completely fed up and he would just retire, particularly if he knows there's little to no chance of him getting his third title. So I'm surprised. But as it stands, he seems willing to commit to this and insists that they'll improve.
Because they have the biggest chance to improve of any, like Cadillac have never done this before, but Aston Martin, they have. Alonso obviously is going to think high of himself. He's still going to think he is top 3, top 5 drivers on the grid, even if it's not. We can have that debate at some point, but he's going to still believe in himself. He believes in Adrian Newey. He believes in Aston Martin because they have all the billions of money. They're like the Manchester City of F1. They have all this new infrastructure. They have all this new technology. All of that should create a super F1 team, like a super team, but it's not. And he clearly thinks that the chance of improvement is enough for him to stay around. And even if it isn't, that is the most Alonso thing to do. Stick around when there's clearly better options. And I mean, I'm not sure if he'd get at least a good seat. Or he'd still get a seat on the modern F1 grid if he left Aston Martin now. But whether it'd be a good seat or a seat that he'd want that to have any sort of development or chance to get a third championship is very unlikely. Like, he wouldn't get a seat at Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes. Like, I think you're looking at teams like Haas and Cadillac, and he's just simply not going to do that. So that's probably why he's optimistic, because although, yes, it's his last chance, and although, yes, it's very terrible at the moment, he's got no other options. If he wants a third championship, he needs to stay with Aston Martin, and there's no point in sulking around if you've got no other options. You get your head down and you work. And yeah, I mean, if it requires treating every single race like a test session this season and finishing 15 laps down in every single race and be the laughing stock of the grid, then he would trade all of it. He would trade all of that. He would trade being the laughing stock and being 10 laps down for a 2027 championship. But is it going to happen? Likely not, because unless Adrian Newey is telling the truth, which he says that but once they start developing, or once they've developed it with the best chassis on the grid, yeah, it probably will be. But then once you add everyone else's development, it'll probably go out to being about fourth or fifth fastest. And I do believe that maybe it is fourth or fifth fastest on the grid, because we saw that with McLaren in 2018 when they got the Renault engine. At least at the start of the season, they were around about there. They were around about fourth, fifth, sixth quickest. And yeah, maybe they could be that. But the thing is, you're not going to win a championship with the fourth, fifth, or sixth quickest car. So yeah, unless Adrian Newey builds a rocket ship that can have an engine inside that doesn't combust at the slightest bit of power, then yeah, Alonso's not getting his third championship, and I think we can all agree on that.
Last point about Aston Martin. In testing, Lance Stroll said one thing, which was very prophetic, that the moment Russell wins the Australian Grand Prix, he will absolutely not say that these regulations are a problem and the car suck. And as it turned out, Russell got out of the car and said, these are the best regulations ever. So
Only one to not complain.
exactly.
Okay, so let's do tops and flops. For tops, I think I'll go George, Lindblad, and Max.
I'll go for Max as number one, because I think he was probably the best driver on the day. George has to be second. I'm gonna go with Antonelli, I think, because I think he did do a slightly underrated job, at least in the race. Been off FP3, but I think he did enough in the race to kind of resurrect that. If not, then it should be Lindblad, but I'm going to go with Antonelli.
Tops. Russell. I am decided between Bortoletto, Lindblad, and Berman. I'm gonna say Berman because he won the midfield fight. So Russell, Berman, and Norris.
No Verstappen?
No, look, he also said the same in the post-race press conference. He overtook cars that were 2 seconds slower per lap. He reached Norris, which was the first car close to him in competitiveness, and the McLaren was slower than the Red Bull. I think we can all agree on that. He wasn't able to make the overtake. So basically, he recovered to the minimum he should have recovered up to. I don't think this is incredible, and neither does Verstappen.
Okay.
For flops, well, does Piastri count, since he, strictly speaking, never started the race?
Yes,
I mean,
yes,
absolutely counts.
okay, well, he does. Okay, so Piastri, Lawson, and the Ferrari pit wall.
I'll go for Piastri. I'm not going to go for Lawson. I'll go for the Honda engine. And lastly, I'll go for who else was particularly mid. I'll just go with Alex Albon, because I don't like Alex Albon.
I'm gonna go for flops Piastri, Aston, and Williams.
So yeah, not a bad way to start the season. As I've said, could have been so much worse. So there's a few interesting tracks coming up, although a couple of them we might end up not seeing at all. But I remain cautiously optimistic about how the rest of the season is going to go.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the DRS Train podcast. We're on YouTube and Spotify, and you can find us on Instagram and X at the DRS Train podcast. If you become a channel member, you can get access to extra footage and behind the scenes content, and you can join our current members, which are Lyshenko, Javad Amadov, Oscar Vagland, Brook Choshkun, Gisel Bettel, Elizabeth Hearn, Chris O'Dea, and Blue Guy. Make sure to tune in for our next episode. Stay safe, and we'll see you all next time.